Hello there, everybody. I'm going to make a very, how would I going to put it, important video. I'm going to give you some information that is not commonly known. On my last video, which was only, well, how long ago? Was it 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago, whatever. I mentioned about a nuclear bomb. That is still active at the minute. That the possibility of that happening are very, very high, if I can put it that way. So, as I'm on the subject of a nuclear bomb, a nuclear blast, nuclear explosion, what happens to people that are caught in that blast? What really happens to them? If you remember going back to that book that's called the Bible, it's a good history book, by the way. There's nothing holy about it. And it's talking about, what's her name? Lot's wife, is it? Lot's wife, yes. She looked back. She wasn't supposed to look back. And she looked back and she was turned into a pillar of salt. Now, that was a nuclear explosion. No dancing around it, that was a nuclear explosion. Sodom and Gomorrah were nuclear explosions. I worked for some time. I worked in two big deserts, the biggest one being the Sahara. And Sahara is a big place. It's frightening, it's scary if you didn't know what you were doing. You just couldn't get into your car and say, I'm going to drive down the Sahara. No, that would be bye-bye to you. You'd be gone, you'd never be heard from again. There are very, very strict rules about driving in the desert. Now, I've seen, or I've been to places that no white man has ever seen. But even on my very first trip into the Sahara, and I was looking at all the different coloured sands, you could get black. It's not all white. You can get red. You can get green, yellow. Where did all that colour sand come from? But I got the sense from the very first time I was ever in a desert. I said, this is not natural. I said, this place is not natural. And I've been down, and as I said, I've seen things that no white man has ever seen, or will ever see, I would say. Of what? A nuclear explosion. It was like glass. When you pick up a handful of the Sahara sand, it's like picking up glass. And what happens to the earth when it's hit by a high blast from a nuclear blast? Everything turns into glass. A human being will turn into salt because that's the main component, the main constituent of a human person. What's in the bones is the salt. And that's what happened to Slot's wife, is it? Or am I getting confused with the Liverpool manager? Her name will come to me. But anyway, or was it Lot's wife? She looked back, but I think there was a lot more to it than that. I think she was much closer to the blast than the rest of her family when they were leaving. They were told to leave and not look back. But I think she was way behind and stopped to look and was turned into a pillar of salt. So, have no doubt about it, the that Bible book is a great thing for history. Now, if I deviate from what I want to say, I'll deviate from what I really want to say. The word God didn't come into the Bible until, when was it? Was it when the James Bible? But it was never, the word God, how many times was the word God mentioned in the original scriptures, the very original, the Aramaic ones, the ones even before the Hebrew? And Jesus spoke Hebrew, by the way. The word God was mentioned how many times? It was never mentioned at all. The word God was never mentioned. But was inserted when people saw that it was necessary to insert the word God to suit their agenda. Okay. What else? Where was I going with this nuclear thing? Yeah, Lot's wife. Now, in my last video, I mentioned it again about this nuclear blast. Now, in 1945, the Americans dropped 2 atomic devices on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. A lot of those souls, or the people, were vaporized. Okay? They were vaporized. And that's what happens in a nuclear explosion. Anybody caught in a nuclear explosion, you're also vaporized. What about your soul? What happens to your soul? I remember upstairs, the higher beings upstairs detest nuclear bombs. Because when a nuclear explosion happens, it goes through all dimensions. The explosion rips through dimensions. And that's just one localized bomb. So in a worldwide situation, you can imagine the effect it's having on higher dimensions. It does affect them badly. That's why they're totally adamant against any nuclear explosions. But they still allowed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, as I'm on the Nagasaki explosion again and Hiroshima, the people that were vaporized, the bodies were just gone. Nothing of them there. There may have been pillows of salt around, the people didn't know what they were looking at. But what happens to the soul of each person? That is also vaporized. It is blown into atoms. Okay? It's just shattered because I'll tell you about the soul later on. And what happens then? When there's pieces, little tiny morsels of people's souls gone away out into the atmosphere, into space, and they can't be left there. They're people's souls. They're part of the Creator. Okay? The explosions are like strong enough to vaporize the souls and scatter them through eternity. But they can't be left there. They have to be collected. All those tiny morsels of souls, all of them has to be collected. The Hiroshima and Nagasaki, also, their souls had to be collected. Each tiny little morsel, atom, micron, had to be collected. That's some job. Now, I don't know if they're still collecting it, because they were local. Uh, I haven't got any information. I haven't asked whether or not all the morsels have been collected, all the souls have been collected and put back to where they should be. Now, imagine if something worldwide happened and all the souls on earth were vaporized. Every soul had to be put back together, will have to be collected. They're part of the Creator. Okay? They cannot just be left out there, floating around, or wherever it is that they go to, when they're vaporized like that. But they all have to be, could imagine millions, you could imagine the entire planet, 8 billion people, their souls have to be collected. If it happens, then they would have to be collected. So who's going to do the collection? Who's going to they go around and gather all these bits and pieces of souls and identify them and put them all back together? That's why they detest nuclear explosions. They detest it. Speaking for myself, I do not like him. I do not like him. Okay? I'm against these atom or nuclear bombs. I don't want to be involved in going around collecting what's left, the remnants of planet Earth. So that's why the and could you imagine the effect it would have on the rest of the local planets, the moon and Neptune and all the rest of them? Don't you think they're going to be affected? Look at Mars. It's desert. Mars wasn't always a desert. Mars was hit with nuclear weapons. A lot of their souls were brought here. Same with Venus. A lot of the Venetians, souls were also brought here to Earth. They couldn't be left to be shattered. The higher dimensions gathered up as many souls as they could and shift them around all over the place. Likewise, what is called now the debris field, Maldek. That was a beautiful Earth-like planet, 3 or 4 times bigger than Earth. That's what the debris field is all about, the remnants of a beautiful planet. We don't want the same thing to happen to planet Earth. All of these souls that were caught in all those big explosions had to be gathered. Somebody had to gather them up. And it's not 4th, 5th, or 6th dimension beings that would put all these pieces together. That's beyond their ability. I don't care what technology they would have. It is left, more than likely, I'm not 100% certain here now, until I go into it deeper, but it is more likely the angelics will have to collect the remnants. They cannot be left out there. They cannot be left just go all over the place. They're not just part of the Creator, they are the Creator. Okay? Like yourself. You are the Creator. I told you in the last video, and many of the video before that you're stars. You came from the stars. Each and every one of you are creators in your own right. Sometime in the not too distant future, you will be creating your own universes. Okay? That's how powerful you are. You may not realize it. But yeah, that's who you are. The deep state and all the negative beings, they all recognize that. They know exactly what you are, and they know what you're capable of. So no nuclear explosions. Localized, I mentioned the word localized, or a controlled explosion, the higher beings would be aware of it, and they can they can put a cordon around, if you want, to stop the souls from disappearing out, to contain a container, in other words, to contain the souls, which is what happened in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. It was contained, not noticeable on Earth, but in higher dimensions, it was contained. All the fragments were contained, if you want to say, in a cylinder, and they were able to contain the soul and collect the souls that way. Vaporizing the whole Earth is a different matter. A lot of the souls from Maldek were also collected and brought down here, or taken to other universes where they can be put to recover and recoup. And that memory wiped till that memory was gone from their consciousness. So yeah, we do have Venetians walking around here. We do have people from Mars. This is, the men are from Mars and the women are from Venus. No, it's their souls, as many as that could be gathered up, were brought here. You see how important this little planet is? It's not just a prison planet. It's a refuge planet. It's a refugee planet. Beings from all over were brought here. It's a planet of recovery. It cannot be destroyed. Marduk was destroyed. Mars was destroyed. Venus was also hit. That's it. That's it. Earth will not be allowed to go the same way. We cannot interfere with free will, as I've stated very, very often. We won't interfere, but that is why we will allow a local explosion to take place. That's what the humans want. Localized. Okay? It's localized. It can be, the souls can be collected easily enough. Worldwide is a different matter. This world is not humanity's to explode, to blow up. It's not your planet to begin with. So I hope that's kind of set things right. And I have noticed, by the way, since I did mention the nuclear bomb, that word is starting to be used a lot more now. Every time I go on YouTube, it says nuclear threat this and nuclear threat that. That's why I was very, very, very hesitant to give out that information. Very hesitant. Because, as I explained in detail in one or two videos, what happens when I say something. It has a nasty habit of turning up. And already it's been mentioned quite a lot. So now you understand why the higher ups, the higher dimensional beings, not the fifth, although they are aware of it, they know what will happen. The sixth, they're powerless to collect souls, to stop the souls, and to change things. That has to be way higher, up in the angelic level almost. It would include the angelics, I'm very, very certain of that. as I believe we are the only ones that will be capable of gathering up the little microns and putting souls back to return them to the Creator. I know there are people say, oh, but it'll all wind up with the Creator anyway. That's not the point. That's not the point. Your soul belongs to the Creator. It cannot be left battered, shattered in pieces. Okay? This is why he has the likes of me and others. I don't want to spend the next couple of million years going around collecting bits and pieces of humanity. I've got other things to be doing. I've got lots of cup of coffee to get. But, yeah. So that's what happens to the souls were caught in a nuclear explosion. Okay? No nuclear wars. Bad for business. I have also noticed that, just getting away from the bombs, nuclear stuff for a minute, I have noticed a lot of the people with the collar, the little dog collar, the little white dog collar that they wear. I laugh every time I see one, because Yahweh has a little chain on that, a little lead on that, and he leads them around the place. Every time I see it, I'm reminded of it. But I noticed these chappies are popping up in YouTube. I see one that was on with Tucker Carlson, interviewed by Tucker Carlson. They're getting in everywhere they possibly can to offset any drift of people away from what they're calling their faith. They're inserting themselves in between again. In other words, they're sticking their oar in like they did already in the past 2,000 years. They're still at it. They're still at it, trying to insert themselves between you and the Creator again. They're trying to reinvent religion again. I said already, all religions will end very soon. All religions will come to an end. It will happen. It will happen. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. We do live in interesting times. One thing about the soul that is in my mind, where is the soul located? You have a soul. Where is it? Well, I tell you something that you probably haven't heard before. The soul is located down by a solar plexus, but it's not in 3D. The soul is in a higher dimension. That's why it can never be seen. People get traces of it leaving the body with these cameras that they have now when the person is dying, and to see this thing floating out, and they call it an angel. No, it's the person's soul is leaving. They're able to catch it. How, I don't know, but yeah, it's located in the solar plexus area. It's not attached in any way, shape or form to the body. Okay? It's not attached. It's not even in third dimension. It's in a higher dimension. I'm not too sure at this stage which dimension it is, but it ain't the third dimension. And it's not the fourth dimension either. I'm pretty sure of that. Being the soul and a part of the Creator, I would set this up fairly high. But it's part of you, but it's not attached to you. But it's still your soul. It's still part of the Creator. It is the Creator. You're the Creator. You're a very, very powerful. And the only thing that binds the two is love. creator and the soul is love. That's all it is. There's nothing else, just love. Love and light, light and love. That's all. There's nothing else. Love yourself. Oh, and if you want to see the creator, go look in the mirror. There you'll find him. Look in the mirror and see if you can see him.